guys, this is Dave Darren. Welcome to the Dave Darren Show. It's going to be a great night tonight. Thanks for everyone joining, and everyone joined early this evening. It's great. I saw everyone pop up here. We got Kurt's on here. Let me scroll down some of the list of names here. Kurt's joined. Wendy's joined. Great to see Wendy. Sparky joined. Great to see Sparky as well. Patrick is here. Welcome, Patrick. And Robert, great to see you. So a few names joining here. Great to see you guys. Really good to see you. By the way, we're going to have a great guest on. We're going to have Dev come on. We're going to talk about, I'm not going to give you any more of a teaser than I did in the introduction to the tag on the show today. But I wanted to do a segue before I introduce Dev to the show. And the segue I was going to do is I'm on all these Facebook groups, which is the way I try to promote the show, to get a little bit of growth so more and more people can find out about the show, find out about each other, find out and explore together. So I get on these groups, and I'm on this brand new group I just recently belonged to and joined. And there was someone out there that put a fascinating post out there. It was on one of the UFO sites. And she actually got out there and she said, you know, I've been a firm disbeliever in UFOs for a long period of time. I thought they were all either hoaxes or people exaggerating things. But she said she was out somewhere with like 3 of her friends and they saw a UFO. Now, UFO stands for unidentified flying objects. But she actually identified it as something that was unearthly. So actually an alien vehicle she believes she saw based upon the configuration, the lighting of the vehicle. So she became a firm believer. So it was interesting. She was going to come on for like 5 minutes and introduce herself and why she is now converted to being a believer. But what happened is in the post she put out there, a lot of people got on, and I guess they were confrontational and a little bit aggressive with her and her conversion into being a believer. Now, one thing that you got to realize with this show, and with any show that deals with anything that's paranormal or UFO or remote viewing, everyone has an opinion. A lot of people think that their opinions are more valid than the other opposing point of view or that opinion. But in all reality, everything is equal. And this show explores those equalities. So we all are interested in understanding. So we all have to be open-minded so we can absorb the new knowledge that we are open enough to actually absorb and explore, understand, and then we may change our points of view. In fact, I do this show more of an exploration. And I see sometimes words that leave my head because I have such a difficult day job. But I try to do this show so I learn. And actually, when we introduce our guests in like 1 minute, what I do is I try to get guests on the show and I try to do a real minimum amount of exploration about who they are. And it's not at all to disrespect the guest. It's because I want to be open-minded enough to learn. If you start reading text, you will really, I don't feel like you'll absorb who that person is by reading text. You will absorb them more when you hear their words spoken to you from the person. So that's why I do it that way. And it's completely not to disrespect and not do homework, and it's not a lazy approach. I want to learn from the person's voice, from their intonation, and it's a better way for me to grasp. And that's the way I do it, and hopefully you guys agree with that. And at this point, let me introduce my guest. This is Dev Rugne on the Dave Darren Show. Dev, how are you?
Hey, Dave, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining the show. So, Dev, you know, like I said, I do research to some degree, but let me ask you what affiliations you belong to and what we're going to talk about tonight. Let's have it from your words instead of mine. So introduce yourself to our audience, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I'm the Assistant State Director for Northern California MUFON, and MUFON stands for the Mutual UFO Network, and they are worldwide. Not too long ago, I joined another group. It's called the North American DogMan Project, and I am the Region 1 Director, and basically what that means is I oversee 11 states here in the West. I'm actually here in California, so, and that includes California, the 11 states that I'll monitor.
Okay, so let's start off with this approach. I'm very interested in how somebody initially gets interested in the topic, at what age you do, what spurred you on. For me, I was very interested in sci-fi at a very young age, the Twilight Zone, and it kind of stirred my imagination. And throughout the years, I've always wanted to do a show like this, and here I am doing a show like this. So what stirred you on with your initial interest in the topic, and at what age was that?
Well, I would say that I was around 11, and which would be in the late 60s, and I watched a lot of those B movies like Earth versus the Flying Saucer, and It Came from Outer Space, things like that. I actually drove my mother crazy with watching those when she really wanted me to be out of the house and playing so that she can clean the house while we were all outside. But I was begging her to stay in because I was just so obsessed with this. And what's funny is I also would climb up on the roof of the house and lay up there and just wonder about, because I was already a believer in, life out in the universe besides us here on this blue marble, I did have some kind of incident that happened about that time. And basically, there was a tree in front of our house, and I used to sit up there and spy on all the kids, kid stuff. And one day, let me just put it this way. I was in that tree a lot, and I was pretty skinny, and, sitting up there between branches or whatever on the main trunk, I was kind of like at home. There was no way that I was going to slip and fall or anything, but I did find myself one day waking up off the ground about 30 feet from the tree, and I just remember waking up and wondering, how did I get where I was? And I looked up at the tree, and I knew I was up there, but I didn't fall. I don't remember anything from being up there to waking up off the ground. I don't know what that was all about. I have not explored that. But as time went on, I was really interested in not only the extraterrestrial presence, but I was really into astronomy. And by the time I hit my teenage years, I was trying to get my hands on everything I could about ETs, aliens, whatever, UFOs. Now remember, that was way before the internet.
Yeah.
So it was like going to the library, picking up magazines that actually featured some stories. That was basically how it all began for me, and it never waned. I was always interested in this subject, and my parents really thought I was strange, believing in something like that. And I think my dad cautioned me to not tell too many people about that, thinking that I would be considered crazy.
Okay.
But and then I talked to Betty Hill on the phone in 1976, I believe, and we had a chat. And she was just telling me, if this is your passion, you should go for it, as far as being an investigator and all that. And so, I ended up joining MUFON in the 80s, but my career in robotics kind of took off, and I really just kind of worked a lot of hours, but I still was doing research and putting my name out there so people would know that they could contact me. And then, let's see, in 2008, I moved to Oregon, the state of Oregon, and I joined at MUFON again, and I became the chief investigator up there. What was interesting is not only was I taking on cases, but I was having my own sightings there. But I did have an early I had a couple of early sightings for myself in 1978. I was a manager at a gas station, and I rode a motorcycle, and I had to take the money to the bank. Now, the banks closed at 3 p.m. There was no such thing as ATMs back then. Mm-hmm. And when I got to the parking lot, obviously it was empty, and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm late. So the door was locked. I banged on the door. They let me in. And then I did the banking. And I came back out. And I was like, okay, great, I'm off work. I was going to put my helmet on. And I was looking up at the sky thinking, God, it's blue skies. I'm off work. This is great. Well, my eye caught two objects flying towards me about maybe 35 degrees, flying from east to west. And I was looking up, and I was thinking, what the heck is this? And I took my helmet back off, and they looked oblong, and there was two of them. And I was like, I don't see any wings. I don't hear anything. There's nobody in the parking lot, so I couldn't say, hey, buddy, come here. And they flew right above me, and I realized they were circular, and there was two of them, and they were about the size of a dime at arm's length. That was pretty big. And they were silver, and you could the sun in the west was kind of glinting off them, but I didn't see anything like windows or a dome or any kind of writing, no fins or wings, nothing. And I just thought, wow, I'm having a UFO sighting right here. So I ended up reporting it to APRO, which is the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization back then. And, of course, it wasn't online, but I had to actually get a sighting form from them, and I filled it out and turned it in. So somewhere in their archives, they have my sighting.
Now, these were things that you're indicating here. You said that they were dime size and they were like an arm's length away. Is that how you describe them?
Yeah, so like if you stretch your arm out, this is what I ask all my witnesses. I ask them, if you were to stretch your hand out in front of you,
sure, and
between your thumb and your forefinger, like what object in your hand would cover the object? And we're taught here at MUFON, if you were to hold an aspirin at arm's length, you would be able to cover the full moon.
Right, exactly. Okay.
So I kind of remind them, because, oh, they're as big as a bus. Well, okay, if I took a bus and put it in the air, 1,000 feet in the air, how big will it be, really, Yeah. Sure. So trying to help people understand
perspective,
what would cover it basically. And so my analogy was, of course, at arm's length, these objects that I saw were, if I held a dime between my forefinger and my thumb, it would be that size.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. By the way, when you mentioned the incident when you were up in the tree, and then suddenly you woke up and you were on the ground, obviously you didn't fall from the tree because you would have been bruised at that point. You would have felt some injury. So obviously you got there some way that you're still not sure how you got there. But you did not get there from falling off the tree, because you would have felt the impact when you came back to consciousness if you were unconscious from falling out of the tree. So obviously that wasn't the way you got there, obviously, right?
Right. And, here's another thing. Here's a very important detail. Whoever planted that tree put some kind of mound. Okay, so this tree was in a mound, and around its circumference of that mound, which was probably about, 4 feet in diameter, around this mound was this dark gray, like coral rock, very sharp. I mean, if if I was to fell out of that tree and hit that rock, I would have been scraped up pretty good. Well, but but it was interesting that I was so far away from the base, and I was 11 years old, but I wasn't, I wasn't ignorant enough to know, hey, how do I get, I knew I didn't fall.
Okay. When you joined the first organization, so that which one was first? It wasn't DogMan, it was the other one, right?
Yeah, it was MUFON. I've been since I joined rejoined. I joined in 2008, and I'm still active, of course. And so I've done about 800 cases in about 10 years. So.
Okay, so actually, the whole idea of that is investigations of UFOs. That's the whole point of the of the...
Yes, MUFON actually has a database, and anyone who has a sighting or an experience, like if they said that they were abducted or, aliens came in their room or something, they can fill out a form online, and it goes into our database. And then wherever, like if the event happened in Northern California, regardless if they moved to like Arizona, let's say, if the incident happened in Northern California, then our team here in NorCal, we would get that report, and then I have a chief investigator. He actually assigns the cases to our team. He'll choose somebody to take on the case. But understand, California has a lot of population. So what MUFON has done, because California continues to be like leading in reported sightings in the nation. So they've split California up from north to south. And so here in Northern California, we take care of the 45 counties, from about Fresno all the way up to the Oregon border. So all 45 counties is considered Northern California MUFON. Below that is Southern California, and they have their own state director and assistant state director and so forth, as far as investigators that will do cases there. And even though their counties are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 11. They only have 11 counties in Southern California, but remember, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Orange County, all that, they have huge population. So it's fair because they get a lot of sightings, let's put it that way, because of the population.
Okay.
And, here's the thing about California. We have pretty good weather year-round, if you even compare it to the East Coast, where they're always in a deep freeze, right, and people are not going out. So here in California, people go out a lot, and they're outside. There's a huge population here in the state. So more than likely, we're going to have more reported sightings.
Plus better weather, less cloud cover as well, which probably plays a part in it too, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing, is people are out and about at all hours because of the weather is better here than a lot of the other states that go through, harsher weather.
Yeah, sure.
In the winter.
Yeah. Now, as part of the organization there, for instance, you do an investigation. You send people out depending on what part of California or what part of the country these reportings come in. Now, the reportings can be varied, I'm sure. They can be standard UFO reportings where someone reports seeing something in the sky that they can't identify. They don't think it's an airplane. They're familiar with the typical things they see in the sky, so they're calling in to report an anomaly that they can't account for. But then you also said you get people calling in that were abducted, that actually saw the alien being. So you get a variety of things. So are you guys, when you assign an investigator, they go to investigate, but do they have other resources? Like, do they call up military bases and try to figure out if there was a military aircraft that was out and about that could be, can be connected to that? Or so what tools do you have as far as the investigator does? What tools does he work with when he does an investigation?
Well, yes. When someone gets assigned a case, obviously they're going to look in the database and see that case where the witness actually filled in all the boxes and wrote a narrative of what had happened. We got the date and the time, and there's a series of boxes that they can check for elevation, like the shape of the object, the number of objects that they saw, and so forth, along with personal information, because we need to know who we're dealing with. You don't want to call somebody up and it turns out to be a 12-year-old kid. We would need parental consent to actually talk to someone underage. So we have to know, how old are they, and then we also like to know what they do for a living, and if they had any pilot experience or if they were in the military, because those people are trained observers. So not to discredit anyone else who is not, but they're looked at as, a more reliable witness based on that background.
Sure.
I've had many sightings of my own and up close unknown craft, both day and night. And I don't have any pilot experience and I don't have any military experience, but, that doesn't discredit me because I don't have those backgrounds. So, we listen to what they had to say about what they saw. And we try to get additional information, like did you see this visually, because sometimes they'll take pictures and then things show up. We actually are supposed to, it depends on the sighting. Like if it's a little white something zipping around in the sky, or maybe it's just going by, usually we'll look at satellite data. We'll look at, we use Stellarium, which is a free astronomy program where you can see where Jupiter or Venus was at the time. Because believe me, I've had cases where people were looking at Venus and they were swearing up and down it was a UFO. So if it's a craft, pretty close, then depending on the area, if there was a military installation, then yeah, we should be calling, that Air Force base or whatever, and seeing if we can get information. A lot of times they don't really tell us a lot, so that kind of makes it difficult. But
is that intentional?
Go ahead.
Is that intentional that they don't tell you, or are they like? What do you think?
Yeah,
it is.
Like I had a case in Oregon where I called a military base and I talked to someone, and she was just not forthcoming with any kind of information. And I kept asking her, "Did you guys have any aircraft in the area?" And, she was saying no, and then kind of backtracked and said, "Well, why? What's going on, or why do you want to know?" And it's just, difficult. So a lot of times they just don't want to tell you. Yeah. If it's something but they did have something out there, they're probably not going to tell you. But, and that kind of makes it hard too, because we're trying to figure out what it isn't, and that's the thing. I try to tell everybody, we're not trying to find out if it's a UFO. We're trying to find out is if it's not an airplane, not a helicopter, not a star, not a meteor, not a satellite. So all these things, not a balloon. We're trying to find out, are they any of those conventional things? Sure. And if they're not, if we can't figure out if it's any of that, then we come up with an unknown. We just don't know what it is. We can never sit there and tell you, just because you saw a UFO, legitimately an unknown craft, I can't tell you what it is. I don't know.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you get some kind of repeat callers periodically that are kind of the abusive ones that probably
yes,
always,
occasionally, yes, we do.
Yeah, always see something, and they're always proven. Or, for instance, you get the ones that's misinterpreted Venus as a UFO. You may get that repeat caller constantly. So your database is probably accurate enough where you can take that repeat caller and just decide that this is something that you wouldn't investigate, or would you still investigate it because you never know that repeat caller who always says that they see something that's always easily discredited, they may see something that one time which is significant. So do you treat them still as a fair candidate for having seen something legitimate?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. There's different scenarios. So like if you have a person who loves their camera, and I don't mean a cell phone, I'm talking a legitimate camera. with a lens and everything. If they're into taking pictures and they're constantly like, oh, and I see this and I see that, you know, they will continue to put in a report, and we will, you know, talk with them and find out, you know, okay, what is it you saw? And it doesn't matter, because like you said, what if one of these times they did see something visually and then caught it on camera. So asking, see, here's the thing about photographic evidence. Everybody sits there and thinks, oh, I've got a picture of it. Well, your naked eye is always going to see much more light, ambient light. So I'm more interested in, what did you see visually? Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk about, now let's talk about your photograph. I always check metadata in photographs. I can actually see if somebody's altered it. It'll tell me the original date and timestamp. It'll tell me what camera was used to take this picture. And if you use Photoshop or anything else to do whatever, like a lot of people like to blow things up or lighten it or darken it, whatever. It'll show that in the metadata. So, and then I'll say, you know what? I need the original file, because this has been altered in some way, whether you blew it up or enhanced it, whatever. I need the original file. So
I had no idea.
That's how I can kind of tell.
I had no idea you could detect that level of accuracy. I know, of course, timestamps and stuff like that, but being able to detect with a piece of, I guess you use some kind of software to detect that, and
it comes right up, right in the metadata. It will, the EXIF data will show that.
Wow. See, I didn't know that.
Or if it's been altered or faked in some way, that EXIF area will be gone.
How about that?
And it'll just be wiped out, and I'll just go, oh, yeah, I don't know what happened here. And then I'll ask the guy or girl, whatever, I'll say, I need the original data, original file. This is not it. And if they don't get back to me, then I know it's faked, and they don't have it, because they know, you know what I'm saying, that they've been found out. So,
you know, let's talk about the photographs, because I'm interested in this and I'm fascinated about this. You know, you see the photographs, you see them on YouTube, and of course on YouTube or wherever you see them, you really can't go into the level of authentication that you do when you're describing what you do now. But a lot of people are out there with cell phones. They take cell phone pictures, and obviously that's not good enough quality to validate via a picture what the person actually saw based upon the picture that they're transferring to you to look at. Then we've got some people with a better quality of camera, whether they're an Autobahn Society or whatever, and they got decent cameras with decent zoom lenses on them. But that still does not give you a great quality of picture to see the formation of the craft. Can't we do better than that? For instance, you're calling up these military bases, and we have satellites all over the planet. We got like the Hubble telescope. Why can't we get that crystal clear image? Or is it a timing thing where we can't get to that resource to align the why can't we do that? I'm sure we're right now we're probably have satellites that we're looking at Iran, Iraq. We're looking at ground installations. People say you could pinpoint Dave Darren walking on Gilbert Road in Gilbert, Arizona. If they wanted to, they can zoom up on me and see me. Why aren't we constantly monitoring? And as soon as we see something, we can zoom in on it, we can clarify it, and we can see a clear image of these UFOs. Why can't we do that yet?
Yeah. Well, that's a $64,000 question. You know, I mean, it's the same way with people in Bigfoot, you know. Why is it always, you know, so blurry, you know? I don't know. You know, getting back to pictures versus what you see with the naked eye.
Uh-huh.
I've had a lot of sightings, and I'll tell you what, when I see something, I don't take my eyes off of it. And I could easily, you know, look down and reach for my cell phone or whatever, and I don't want to do that because they're gone in a blink. I mean, they can be gone in a blink of an eye. And while I have it in my sight, I am looking at every detail that I can, paying attention mentally. What is the elevation? What is the direction? All that is important because if let's say it was a small object, way up in the atmosphere, then I can actually check satellite data, like was it the ISS? A lot of times people will see the ISS and it'll look anomalous, but it's still nevertheless a satellite that we can actually get that data. Same thing with when I look at Stellarium and I'm looking at the astronomy program and trying to find out what direction and elevation, time and date, when this happened, I can actually find out what was in the sky in that area that they saw. But if it's really close, it's a big craft, it's obviously something anomalous, it's not anything, like an airplane. I would just say, unless you have the cell phone in your hand, don't take your eyes off of it and try to get as much detail with your naked eye as you can. If your cell phone is in your hand, bring it up, try to just take pictures, just click, but try to keep your eye on it as well. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's the best that we could do. But I don't know. Like, I've seen a couple of nighttime videos. I have 2 cases that have nighttime video of a craft, and they're kind of amazing. So normally if someone's taking pictures at night or video, it's hard to see anything unless this thing is lit up or it's got a lot of multiple colored lights on it. But yeah,
okay. Okay, let me say hello to a couple people here. Frank joined. By the way, Frank is a cool guy because he actually worked on the Apollo mission, so good to see you, Frank. Brent's here. Good to see Brent. And a new viewer, we got Julie, who Julie I know from Phoenix, Arizona. She's followed my show when I used to do a music show. She finally followed me now to this type of format. Great to see Julie here as well. So let me ask you, Dev, here. So obviously you're looking up at the sky and you've had a lot of these sightings. You've done a lot of investigations. That obviously a lot of the stuff is called UFOs, unidentified flying objects. But you personally, you believe that you have seen not necessarily UFOs, but alien craft. Do you believe that you personally seen not a UFO, but something that you've identified as something unearthly? You believe you've seen an unearthly spacecraft, correct?
Well, here's the thing. I got to be careful with words. When we say unidentified, it's because it wasn't any of those conventional things that I mentioned before: airplane, helicopter, the planet Venus, balloons. When I personally have seen craft up close, it always kind of freaks me out because it brings the reality back to me that, hey, this is the reason why I'm doing this, is because I've also had sightings, not just working other people's cases that they've seen something. I never want to say I saw an alien craft. I don't know if it is. And here's the thing. I don't know if you know who Ben Rich was, but he ran Skunk Works, and they, developed, or they back engineered craft and stuff. But he had said that these UFOs, some of them are ours and some of them are theirs. So I always remind myself of that because he should know. And I don't have the ability to say whether that was what I saw. I mean, it's unidentified. I don't know. It wasn't an airplane. It wasn't a helicopter. It wasn't anything that I could conventionally say that it was. So, was it alien? I don't know.
Okay, but via the compilation of multiple reports that you've seen and multiple investigations that you've been on, and the credibility of some of these people that are very thoroughly credible, you do believe that there are aliens. There's life forms outside of the planet Earth. I'm sure you probably believe that, as I do. Is that correct? You probably believe that.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure that you believe that they have potentially visited our airspace. Potentially. Now, you still say that you're being very cautious of your wording, but do you believe that any aliens have landed on planet Earth or are among us at this point, walking around?
I believe so.
You believe so? Okay. How do you believe they go about being not seen? I mean, the physical beings themselves. How have they done that? Through your investigations and all that, have they camouflaged themselves to look like us? Have they brainwashed us to the fact that we're not seeing them, we're seeing a projected image of what they want us to believe because they've kind of controlled our minds? How are they camouflaging themselves from us? Any idea?
Well, a lot of the cases that I have taken and worked that were sightings of craft that were at close range, within, when we say close encounter, that's 500 feet within from the witness. Okay, so
500 feet, is that right? That is really close. 500 feet.
Yes, 500 feet from the witness is considered a close encounter.
Sure, that's really
and
close.
I've had, many people who have had close encounters, but you have to understand, if they had missing time, let's say, they aren't consciously remembering what happened. There have been people that have reported to us that are in their bedrooms and then they see, entities in the room.
Uh-huh.
And that's not even an association with a UFO. It's just, hey, I'm getting ready to go to bed. I get in bed and boom, there's these, what they call aliens. And it's varying experiences. You know what I'm saying? From either they've been levitated or they just see them at the foot of the bed and then they don't remember. So it's just different experiences from different people. Some people remember a lot consciously and some won't. Some won't remember.
Now, have you engaged them with any, I've never been hypnotized, but there's hypnotists out there, and there's a lot of people that, I don't know much about hypnotism. I do this show to learn more and more and more, so eventually I have to have a hypnotist come on. But can you hypnotize these people and get more information out of them that's validated?
Yes. In fact,
you do that.
One of my closest friends is a certified MUFON hypnotherapist, and I give her, well, actually, when a witness wants to be regressed and they're asking for, someone locally, I will give them her name and tell them you need to contact her and work it out with her, because MUFON doesn't pay for those services. So they would have to pay for it out of their pocket. And there's been many cases that I have given her, her these people's names, and she's done regression with them. And I've always asked them, if you get a hold of her, can I get your permission to contact me after the fact and let me know what you found out? Mm-hmm. And they said, sure. And so they've gotten back to me. One guy came back and said, oh my God, you're not going to believe, but he was taken aboard. But of course I knew he had to have been, because a beam of light, the last thing he remembers is a beam of light engulfing him from a UFO, a saucer-shaped object over in Yosemite. And that's all he had remembered consciously, because the next thing he knew, he was back in his car, waking up the next morning, because this had happened in the middle of the night. And he got back to me and said that he saw her and was regressed, and he talked about, being on a table inside this craft. And he, went into some detail about how he got inside through an opening. But, it was kind of fascinating to hear that he got additional information through regression.
Wow. So hypnotism is a scientific product. Is that correct? Like I said, I've never had a hypnotist on. I've never been hypnotized. There's hypnotists in Las Vegas, Nevada, who were just there to perform a show. But hypnotism is a true science, is actually validated, is a true, authentic, real product.
You're saying what did you say? Hypnotism?
Yeah.
Well, hypnotherapy.
What's the difference between hypnotism
beyond
and hypnotherapy?
Just, seeing if somebody was abducted. It's actually they help people lose weight, stop smoking, help with anxiety. They can't sleep, so she can actually regress them to try to find out how this problem is stemmed from. So they do help people with like everyday things, So hypnotherapy is, and they get certified. It's
could you?
It's not just somebody just, hey, lay down on the couch and I will count you down.
Have you experimented with this? I'm curious. Like, for instance, if you go to a hypnotherapist and they regress you to that event that took place, and you mentioned one individual was actually via a beam of light was beamed up to the vehicle, and he was on a metal type of table, which is we hear that a lot. Now, when that individual goes to one hypnotherapist, can you actually then cross-reference that person by bringing him to another hypnotherapist to see if the same story is gathered? Now, of course, because that would add validity to the one hypnotherapist getting that group of information and another one as well. So you're kind of doing a cross-reference. Like you get on the internet and you want to explore a news story today with everything that's out there, which is opinionative, but you can go to multiple and cross-reference and see what you can gather as the real news story. So do you do that with hypnotherapists? Take one and then cross-reference that person to another one to validate? You don't do that. No,
because of the fact that they have to make that conscious decision to even go to one.
Right,
and then number two, they have to pay for it out of their pocket.
Right, okay.
So if they feel... I've been hypnotized before. I've been under regression with several different hypnotherapists.
Okay.
And I've got to tell you, the very first time I went was 1990. And, I wasn't sure what to expect, but man, when you can see in your mind's eye an event and you feel the emotion, you are there. And I knew without a doubt that what I was remembering was real, was nothing I was concocting. It was a real event. And what was interesting is in that particular regression session, she had asked me, I'll never forget this, when was the first time you saw a UFO? Well, if you ask me that consciously, I'm going to tell you that 1978 incident.
Right.
No, that's not what came up. All of a sudden, I saw myself standing on a ledge overlooking the desert floor, and I was thinking, what? I at first was thinking, what am I seeing, And I heard myself say, I could see this cylindrical object on the desert floor, resting on the desert floor from my vantage point up on the ledge. And she asked me, can you see when the first time you saw a UFO? I said, yes. It's the canoe people, and they were there to talk to my father. Well, I quickly realized, because she said, well, look down at yourself, and do you know who you are, and all this other. And I realized I was a Native American boy. I was actually the chief's son. And I knew that these people that came in this object, which we called, you have to understand, Native Americans, this was, I guess, back in the 1800s, they're not going to know to say a cylindrical object. What comes to mind is what the things that they know. We know anything that's long like that is a canoe. What else could it be? So it made sense after I thought about it on the ride home that my people in that lifetime, because she actually, my mind took me to another lifetime. And I realized, of course, it makes sense that you're going to associate what you know. A good point in this is there was a sighting in Mexico, and when the investigator was asking what did it look like, you know what the guy said? It looked like a sombrero.
Oh,
well, yeah, because he associated that shape with a hat. So it's what we can associate. That's why when I get a case that gets assigned to me, I'll read the narrative, and if I don't understand what they mean, I will ask them, can you clarify? Because I'm trying to understand what you mean with your words. Because they're trying to tell you something that's unknown to them in their own language and anything that they associate stuff with to describe shape or sound or what have you. So anyway, it was very interesting, you know, the whole regression thing. And I've gone under a couple of times with two other different people, but it's something that a lot of people, you might get people out there that think that hypnotherapy is like, oh, well, you know, they'd rather have talked to someone who remembers things consciously. Well, yeah, that's great, but not everybody's going to remember things consciously.
And you want to explore the unconscious, which is equally important, right? I would think.
Well, yes, because guess what? If you're frightened by something, or your mind can't handle what you're seeing, because it is scary when you see something up close.
Sure, absolutely.
I saw an object 20 feet away from me, hovering about, I don't know, 100, maybe 75 feet above the ground, and it freaked me out. And I was an adult, a young adult, but I still was an adult, and I was like, oh my, it scared me. This thing was huge, and
I was just going to.
My mind was trying to figure out what I was looking at. So when you get frightened about something, and you don't understand what you're seeing, you may not remember some of the most frightening parts, which is being taken. You know? Yeah.
A couple questions here that you just stirred on. 75 feet, or you mentioned 500 feet. These would have to be huge sightings, correct? Because these are huge craft, right? This has got to be if you see.
That sighting that I just spoke of actually happened in '84, approximately 1984.
Right.
And I only saw, from my vantage point of when I walked out of the house, because it was a 2-story house. I heard, the minute I walked out to the backyard, I heard like a low hum.
Okay.
And I thought, I looked to the right, like I was following the noise, and then I saw it sitting there in this, it was in this, hovering, and I just went, I gasped. I never ever gasped in my life since or before or since seeing this thing, and my mind was reeling because I was trying to figure out, well, what is this thing? Well, I only saw about 15 feet of it because it was oblong, like kind of like blimp shape. But the house was covering what I would consider the rest of it. But in my mind somewhere, I said, oh, it's the Goodyear blimp, And I ended up going back to the house, but I couldn't understand. Actually, I forgot about this whole incident until years later. And then when I remembered, I thought, "Oh my God, why did I go and why didn't I check it out? I was already deep into the UFO phenomenon. You know, I should have went out and saw it, went underneath it, and grabbed a camera, whatever. I didn't.
But from 75,
and I don't know why.
From 75 feet away, it had no physical impact on you. Like you didn't feel any waves or any thrust or anything like that. You didn't.
No.
Nothing affected your physical person.
No.
That's interesting. Okay.
And then after I realized, when I remembered years later, I started to I called Goodyear to find out, do they have blimps about 30 feet in length? Would you ever fly them in that low in a residential? And they're like, no, we don't have anything that small, and we would never, it would never be in a residential like that and that low. And I said, okay. And so I was calling every dirigible and blimp place I could to get more information, like, hey, do you have anything this size? And they're just like, no.
Yeah, well,
I said, okay.
And if it was hovering that low, if it was a real blimp, you would, because, for instance, I have clients once in a while, and I go to Long Beach, California, and there's a Goodyear place there with the blimp. And I've seen it take off because I've physically driven there, and I wanted to get on the blimp. And actually, they did invite me on it, but for some reason, I missed it. But nevertheless, you can see the impact of that blimp with the physical area around it, because it's launching from Long Beach, California. There's a lot of dust and debris there, and you see things moving around. So if it was a blimp, you would have seen and felt an impact of that. So it obviously wasn't that. I'm curious, have you been abducted, like in all of your hypnotherapy sessions? Have you been physically abducted?
Not that I know of. Actually, when we tried to explore some of the things that had happened to me, there was a block, and she really couldn't, she said, something's blocking you, and you can't. And then she asked the question. She said, let me ask you something. Are you ready to learn the truth? And I said, no.
Really?
I decided no. And it was like I paid money to go see her. I went out of my way. But when she asked that question, are you ready to learn the truth? And I just said no. And that was 1990. So
how about now? Some years later, are you now ready to learn the truth?
I guess it's just not important.
Why not?
After all this time. I spend countless hours of my own time, talking with others that have had sightings and experiences and helping them. There's a lot of people that are very frightened over stuff that's happened to them. And, I offer, I talk with them, and I always tell them, if you need to talk again, contact me. And, they're appreciative because they feel like they can't tell anybody. Even to this day, like it's 2019, and some of these people are like, well, I can't let anybody know, or, they don't want to, some of their family members laugh at them, and, so it's kind of sad.
Oh, yeah, I do know that, because the opening to the show, I just, I had a segue that I wanted someone to come on before I introduced you, Dev, to the audience. And she decided not to come on because of some of the commentary on the Facebook group, where she opened up and said that now she is a believer in aliens craft. And I guess she was ridiculed, commented, and it was unfair because I had her interested in coming on the show and sharing her story with us, which it's too bad when that happens, because we should have an open mind.
It really is, because, people want to talk about it. They like to get it off their chest, so to speak, because, it changes their reality when they kind of realize, man, I just saw this, and now, I know what I saw.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that feeling. For instance, like I said, I've never seen. Now, I've never seen actually a UFO. Every time I see something in the sky, now, granted, I live a lot of my life in the city. So if you're in like New York City or Philadelphia, there's a lot of city lights that kind of dwarf the lights that you might see in the sky. And we have a lot of cloud cover, like we discussed. You're in California, and do you have a better ability to see these things than we do in New York City or Philadelphia with the combination of street light, building lights, skyscrapers, and cloud cover. So I've never seen a UFO, and I kind of wish I did. And I look up in the sky when I'm in Arizona to try to see if I could see anything like that. But I'm curious about this. You know, we talked about hypnotherapy. How about remote viewing? I've had someone on who's actually very good at remote viewing. Is that something that your clients or yourself can delve deeper in without regression doing hypnotherapy? Is remote viewing a way of exploring what you've seen or your customers have seen or clients? Remote viewing, is that something you might do or think about or tried?
Yes. I don't know if you're familiar with the Monroe Institute in Virginia. Let's see, in 1986, I think it was, I went to the Monroe Institute to learn to come out of my body. It's an out-of-body thing, and for a whole week, it was pretty amazing. One night, we had a special guest. It was Joe McMoneagle. He was actually the Army's first remote viewer. And one evening, he taught us how to remote view. And when I left there after a week, I decided to try it out. And with a friend of mine, just a simple, thing. I don't know if it would be considered remote viewing because, but it was, I told her, draw on a piece of paper an object, something that's identifiable. Put it in the envelope, which was a security envelope, couldn't see through it or anything. I said, then put it on the ground. And I tried to perceive what it was. Well, I got it right. Now, I don't know if that would be remote viewing or more on a psychic level, but she drew a key, and I said it was a key. I knew it was. It was kind of exciting. So I never really attributed it. I couldn't say it was remote viewing, even though I was trying to do that. Mm-hmm. It could have been psychic. But as far as remote viewing, nobody I've talked to has done that as far as one of my witnesses. But I did try several times to do that kind of thing. I don't know if you would consider what I did remote viewing versus maybe a psychic moment.
Well, I want now.
But before I wanted to say, I'd like to give out my website.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. We have time, by the way. We don't stop the show at the top of the hour. If the guest is interesting and we want to talk more, we can go beyond. But give out your website now. That's fine. Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's northerncaliforniamufon.com. And although it's, geared for, this area, this state, others can actually go on that website and see me and my team, my state director, Ruben, and see we have like bios. There's obviously another area that I am involved in, which is the North American DogMan project. So I do, on that website, I do state that if anyone has seen a cryptid, like Bigfoot, DogMan, to contact me, and I do put my email there so that others can contact me. I just wanted to put that out.
Sure. Is a DogMan a UFO? I'm sorry, an alien? That's what I meant to say. Is that not of this planet?
Well, that's the debate, is this flesh and blood? Is this an extraterrestrial? Is it something that is more like a skinwalker where it disappears, but then the whole thing is it could disappear, but that could just mean it went in a portal.
Yeah, correct.
It could be dimensional. So we don't really know. I mean, everybody has their theories. But this creature is fascinating to me because I never thought that something like that could be real. I did a lot of research. I haven't seen anything like that myself. And it's a kind of a werewolf-looking creature. Yeah. It's bipedal, and it's like 7 feet tall. a lot of people that go out hiking and hunting, a lot of times they'll see that kind of thing. And, you know, I thought it was just Michigan and Pennsylvania, those kind of states that were seeing it, but it's really all over the world. So that kind of makes me wonder if it's dimensional, coming in dimensionally. But we've also have had some sightings here in California. And I did do a case of a man that saw one in up north in the Jedediah Forest up there, close to the Oregon border, and he took a picture. And so I talked with him because he actually lived out of state. He was just passing through and was in that forest area taking pictures. And when he saw that thing, he took pictures, and, you know, I checked the metadata and everything, and I just didn't see any tampering or anything. Now, you know, someone might say, well, it's a bear, it's a black bear standing there. But, you know, I don't, when you talk to the witness, he says he could see it with his eyes. You know, he was watching it visually before he took the picture. It wasn't like he was just snapping pictures. You know, it wasn't that. It was, oh my God, I've seen this thing. It's standing there. He said it had tall ears on top of its head, and its chest area kind of came down to a waist, and then really powerful thighs. It was black, solid black in color, but he says, I could see the muzzle on this thing. This had a dog face.
Yeah.
He goes, this was not a bear. And so I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and where there's one, there's usually not just one. Like when we talk about, you know, Bigfoot in general, you're not thinking that it's just one of those beings on the entire planet, because there's got to be more. So you would think that whether they're there through cross dimensions, like you mentioned, or whatever the case, I'm sure that there's more than one. So that's why there's multiple sightings across the world, right?
Well, yes.
Yeah, of course.
These creatures are being seen all over the world, so
right.
It's not just in one location.
When you're investigating them, are you actually doing any of the hypnotherapy with them but you don't need to, because they usually don't block that out of their mind where you have to delve deeply into it. They're more open to describe it, more easily available to describe what they saw, right? It seems like that would be an easier observation without going to hypnotherapy, probably.
Well, right. Yes. There's been, you know, there's been stories out there of people that have seen this creature, and they are so frightened that they use the term, what was I going to say? They're terrorized.
Yeah, they see a powerful
creature.
They
use the word terror.
Yeah.
And that's pretty strong when you're describing fear.
Sure, absolutely. And they see
in fact, some of these hunters who are armed to the teeth, they give up hunting altogether. They don't want to go back out there.
Unbelievable! Wow. So
it's a little frightening to know that something out there eludes that much dread and fear. So.
Yeah, well, from the descriptions that we read, with just the massive form and the powerful projection of that being, of course you'd be more fearful of that than a bear, because you're more educated in the capabilities of a bear. There's even websites out there or YouTube videos of how to not have a confrontation with a bear. But when you see something totally believe in,
well,
go ahead.
You know, getting back to what you were saying about a bear is an animal.
Right.
This creature has shown intelligence.
Right.
So it's beyond an animal.
Oh yeah.
It's a sentient being. It has intelligence, and an animal you can easily figure out. You know that you know their behaviors.
Exactly.
You know that they're attacking because maybe it's a female protecting her young. Maybe it's a male who is after food.
Yeah.
You know, so it's or if you scare it or you injure it and it just lashes out
Right.
from pain. These are animalistic characteristics,
Right.
and this creature it has intelligence, just like Bigfoot has intelligence. So we're dealing with something else.
Oh, so they're different. So Bigfoot and this creature are different.
Oh yeah, Bigfoot is basically what you've been reading for decades now. Is you know, it's, I don't know, 8-9 feet tall, and it has like a bare body, but it's huge, but it has like a human face, and the Dogman is a werewolf creature that walks bipedally.
Yeah, I was confused. I didn't know that there were I thought that you were describing the same thing as Bigfoot and the Dogman, just named differently, but they're completely different visual beings. They're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So I misinterpreted you. Okay, I had no idea. Okay, so and the Dogman actually, he is visible, but then he can be instantly not seen, is what you're saying as well, which could be a crossing into another dimension of that physical being. Is that correct?
Well,
possibly. You're not sure.
Both Bigfoot and Dogman, there have been cases where they are seen in conjunction with UFOs.
Wow.
So that kind of gives you the idea that maybe, you know, they are, I'm not saying extraterrestrial, because that would be they came from another planet, we don't know, or they could be from another dimension, and that those UFOs just come in and out of the dimensions as well. And I've had cases where UFOs have come in and out of dimensions in the sky. People have seen that.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, there's also been where there was a case of where Dogman was seen, and then it went behind a bush, and it never came out. When the guy finally got up enough courage to go and see, you know, like, did it walk away or what? Because he really didn't want to turn his back on it.
Huh.
And he realized it just disappeared. It was just gone. There was no way that he could not see it come, you know, walk into this bush, and then it should have came right back out. And there was no way, he said, it disappeared. So who knows? We don't have the answers. We don't. I think that's why, you know, so many people are trying to figure out what all this means. You know, with the cryptids and UFOs.
Yeah, I wonder.
They're all mysteries.
I wonder if the dog, for instance, in our house here, we actually have a dog which protects our home. In fact, when we used to live on the East Coast a long time ago, we had a Shepherd Rottweiler mix, so that when I traveled and my wife was alone, she had a protector of herself and of our house that I wasn't in to help protect her. I wonder if these Dogman, I wonder if those beings are actually protectors of the aliens. So the aliens are, perhaps they've landed on planet Earth, and they're out there and about trying to understand our planet or whatever their purpose is on planet Earth. And I wonder if these Dogman creatures are protectors of them, just like I have our Rottweiler Shepherd to protect our wife. I wonder if they're out there to not only protect, but to scare and get people away from the potential visual of the spacecraft. That could be possible, right?
Could be, but you got to understand, I believe there are numerous types of entities out there in the universe.
I was going to ask you that. That's good.
They could just be their own race.
Right.
And they're coming in and out of this dimension. You know, as the Earth goes into its fifth dimension, you know, its higher vibrational rate, I really believe that the veil between this world and other dimensions are thinning. So coming in and out would probably be really easy at this time.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I think about extra dimensions out there. For instance, not that long ago, it was about 2 months ago, and I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. We have these red light cameras, so everyone's panicked because they're afraid to go through the light when it's yellow because they think that the yellow sequence is going to be shorter. And you even hear reports once in a while that to get more revenue from the people who live in the city, they shorten the yellow light so that the red light comes up quicker and they get more revenue from the photo radar camera. So people read that stuff, and as soon as they see the yellow light, they slam on their brakes. So I'm driving behind someone. I know that light, so I know it's going to stay yellow for 13 seconds, so they've got time to go through, and so do I. Not that I'm trying to beat the red light, but I'm just thinking the guy behind me might want to get through it, so I better get out of there before he hits me so I don't slam on my brakes. But you start wondering, when I got through the red light, I didn't get through it because that person slammed on their brakes. And I slammed on my brakes, and I must have not, I missed them by probably 2 or 3 inches. I was that close. But then I started thinking in my mind, I thought, I wonder if there's another dimension where actually I had that accident, and I wonder if there's another dimension, if all dimensions exist. I wonder if there's a dimension where I actually hit her and she died, and here I am, I killed someone in this car accident. I wonder if every dimension, because there's been studies of this, or there's articles about it, and there's theories about every single possibility happens. Do you believe that that's true? Does there every dimension exist?
Well, I think that that's a possibility, but there's also another possibility, is different timelines. So it gets complicated, but it's like, here you are talking to me in this interview show, and in another timeline, we could be doing something totally different. You see what I'm saying? So we exist, but we could change our reality by the timeline being different.
Yeah. So in other words, there's another dimension of you and I having a conversation where the questions are better, right? and I know I've opened up a lot of topics here. We started off with what we intended to talk about, and here we're talking about, well, DogMan's appropriate because you're part of that. But now I've even brought you into, does every dimension exist? So I'm sorry to catch you off guard, by the way, because I try not to do that. But like I said, when I do these interviews, I just try to listen to the person, and in my mind, I start having these questions, and unfortunately, they come out. So I appreciate that you're dabbling with my random train of thoughts here. So thanks on that one. So give out your website one more time so people that might have missed it, they'll be able to grab it again.
Northern California MUFON, MUFON.com.
Okay. And you're in California, by the way. So it's funny because I have someone, Wendy, who actually does investigation of haunted houses or haunted environments, and she's going to invite me out. I was supposed to go out a couple weeks ago, but our dog was sick, so I didn't go out. But you're in California. If there's an opportunity where you'd like to bring me along, I don't know if that's even possible, or if you do that, I would love to record that. It'd be hard to do that because then you'd have to get permission from the person that you're investigating. But if you want to, if you have the means to do that, and if you have the interest, I'd love to tag along with you and follow the stories through. If you can do it, it's up to you.
Yeah, well, MUFON has strict policies.
Yeah, okay.
Where we don't bring
the media in?
Anybody. Yeah, we don't bring anybody in other than other investigators.
Okay, that's fair.
It's to protect the witness.
Sure. Okay, I can understand that. I kind of thought.
So
that might be
we protect. That's kind of a key thing. We protect their anonymity because a lot of them don't want their name out there. They don't want anyone to know. This is kind of a safe space for them to report and just be able to talk it out and a lot of times they want to know if there's other people that have seen that same thing on that same date, same area. So
I would think so. I would think that'd be their number one curiosity.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame that people are so judgmental because I would find someone, for instance, everyone I have on the show here, the fact that they've had different explorations or different things that have occurred to them in their lives. To me, I don't consider any of that out of the realm of possibility. It's just that the way things are is everyone has their own physical ability. So, for instance, we have a remote viewer who joins the show periodically, Jeremiah. He's got a great skill at this. And there's some people who may be interested in remote viewing, but their level of skill isn't quite up there. So then they are in somewhat of a disbelief. But everything depends on timing, skill level. So it's too bad that we're so judgmental still in 2019, where we should really at this point be totally open-minded, because we're closing out the realm of discovery when we're not open-minded.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Dev, it was great having you on the show. I appreciate the fact that you spent extra time with us tonight, so I appreciate that very much. So, Dev, if you ever want to come on, if you've got an exploration that you want to discuss with us, please come on again, or just come on and keep in touch with us periodically. And I'd love to have you back on. It'd be great to have you on again. Okay?
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dev. Okay, and thanks for joining the show. I'm going to close out the show, but I'll close out with Dev right now. Thanks, Dev, for joining us very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, so that's it. That's it for the Dave Darren Show tonight. Thanks for joining the show. By the way, if you can do this, it'd be a great service to the show, is to share the show periodically. So in other words, get people more involved so that we have more people listening in. If you ever have, like tonight, I was not able to because I was focusing on the guest. Sometimes you notice I do go through all of the comments here and I try to read them to the guest, but tonight was a very focused commentary between myself and Dev. So if you want to join the show in the future, just remember the call-in number is always the same, and I put it in all the introductions of the show. It's 609-467-4000. Now, no one called tonight because they were probably all listening, and that's valid. But if you have questions, remember, I'm not the perfect host here. I may not have your question in my mind, and your question may be the best question of the evening. So if you've got a question, don't forget to share it by calling into the show. That's the best way to get interest in the conversation with the guest. So that's it for tonight. We do have some great shows coming up. I was trying to get a hypnotist on the show, so I'm going to reach out to him again to get him back on the show because he was supposed to be on here, and I kind of lost contact with him. But we got some great shows coming up. I think 4th of July is a Thursday this year. So I think 4th of July we're going to take off on that specific day, or maybe I'll just run some interesting things. But make sure you join the show. Remember, it's every Thursday and every Sunday, 7 o'clock if you're in the Pacific time zone, 10 o'clock on the Eastern time zone. And that's all we got for tonight. Keep on commenting if you have questions amongst each other, and it'd be great to keep the dialogue continuing. That's it for tonight, guys. Thanks a lot for joining the show. I'll talk to you on Sunday. Cheers.